Well, hello everybody. This is Roger Derling, Executive Director at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and I'm joined by Abner Benaim, the writer and director of the film Plaza Catedral, which is shortlisted for the Academy Awards Best International Feature. It's actually the first time that a Panamanian film makes the short list for the Academy Awards, and I'm so excited to have Abner here. I'm Panamanian. I was born and raised in Panama, and so it's a great honor, a great joy to have you here, Abner. Welcome.
Thank you so much. The honor is mine. It's funny that we haven't met before because I've heard so much about you and the Santa Barbara Film Festival, and I knew that you were Panamanian, but we haven't crossed our paths. So
Well,
it's great to be here.
yeah, absolutely. And what a way to for me to get acquainted with you. I actually had seen Chance, your previous film, and I'd also seen Invasion and the Ruined Blades documentary, so I was very familiar with your work, but I was not prepared to to see Plaza Catedral. Is a fantastic film that I encourage everybody to see and cherish. My first question, Abner, is the visual landscape that you create in the film with your cinematographer Lorenzo Hagerman. I love the wide angles that you guys chose to shoot the film in, the color scheme that it's very muted. There's not bright colors. Can you tell us about your choices that you made with Lorenzo?
Yeah. Well, starting from the technical point of view, it's digital cinema, but it's very, very specific, beautiful Spanish lenses, and they're anamorphic. So, from the get-go, the capture is a very beautiful image and very, very panoramic. Um, and and the idea was to capture Panama City almost as a character, as or a platform, a stage in a way, because I feel that Panama has a lot to say in its visual imagery, in the contrast that you see in the film, and that you see it if you go to Panama, even as a tourist, even for a couple of hours. The first thing you see is in Panama City is the buildings, and then if you start looking more, you'll see that right next to the buildings there's something that doesn't look at all like that modern city. It looks like very poor neighborhoods, and um, and it's all very packed together. And then there's the ocean. It's so I sort of dreamt up with Lorenzo this very small part of the city that was going to be our stage, and we did talk a lot about um, the fact that we were going to go against stereotype, against character, in the sense that we usually think of tropical countries and tropical cities as bright and sunny, and they are sometimes, of course, but they can also be very gloomy, very melancholic. In Panama, for example, we have rain there 8 or 9 months a year. I
Correct.
love it. It's beautiful. The skies are always beautiful. It's full of clouds, but that it gives a lot of, in terms of mood and feeling, and it affects the human being also. Not only in a movie, but I wanted to capture that because that's something that's always captured me as a Panamanian living there. I'm always looking at the sky, and everyone is, and it really changes your day. So we did want to tone it down and not be the bright sunshiny day.
Yeah, or nor bright colors either, because I noticed that the color red, the warm colors are not there. Only for a few moments. The T-shirt that Chief wears is bright red, but everything else is blues and greens. I want to go back to the anamorphic lenses. I what I loved besides what you told us, is that it's a very internal journey of the main character. We feel her mood and her struggle. And the anamorphic lenses, what I loved is that you felt the sense of isolation in the character throughout the movie because of the way that you and Lorenzo chose to shoot it. Can you talk about that relationship between the main character and the cinematography?
Well, I can say that, you know, when you do a close up with an anamorphic lens, you can be very tight and you still have the background, and that allowed me to play with that kind of disassociation that you feel with your place when you're not well. You know, when you're
Hmm.
not well in your soul, in your mind, when you know the main character is suffering. She lost a son, um, and I wanted to show how she's in all these perfect or so-called perfect spaces. You know, everything looks right, but she's almost like there and not there at the same time. That was the kind of conversation that I would have with Lorenzo, and the DP, and also with Coca Rodrigo, the art director. She's, I was just on the phone with her. She's also an incredible pro talent, creative, and also a friend, a friend of the film.
Hmm.
We were very lucky. I had an incredible team from all over Latin America. It was like a dream team from 12 countries. We had people from Panama, Colombia, Cuba, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, and really top of the best people I could find. Uh,
Hmm.
and they were all there not because it was a big production. It was quite the opposite. It was a very small Panamanian production, but they were somehow attracted or moved by the script. So they were there for the right reasons.
Hmm.
Um, and it worked. It worked out really nicely to do this project with people I admire so much in the way they work.
So I want to zero in on there's some powerful visuals that help you tell the story. You use the symbol of the Bridge of the Americas. She is an architect and she's working on the model of the Bridge of the Americas. There's also this incredible shot of the model of the city of Panama and is juxtaposed with the actual city of Panama. Can you discuss those visuals that you incorporate into the film?
Yeah, well, sometimes you do things instinctively, and then they start taking shape. There was a plan, but then you start feeling that there are things that are repeating themselves in the way of symbols. So I think the Bridge of the Americas, for example, it's just a bridge I love, and because it's a childhood memory. Because whenever you cross it, it means you're leaving the city and you're going into nature. For me personally, it has so many, because it's a symbol of Panama, the Panama Canal, and it represents so many things. But in the film, it represents, of course, the very obvious metaphor of joining two people together, the bridge. But it
Hmm.
also goes further and says, okay, what happens if these two people who are not supposed to meet actually meet? What happens if not, like in real life? In real life, maybe this film could have ended in minute 25 or so. She would just close the door on him and say, bye. But I wanted to explore what happens if we do build that bridge, even if it's for a film, um, to be able to imagine, and it sounds naive and maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no. One of the powerful things for me watching the film is that you speak about the relationship between the two main characters, the mother and the young kid, street kid that she befriends. You emphasize not so much the class distinction, but the emotional connection that the two have. Can you talk about that emphasis?
Yeah, I'm glad you put it that way, because that's exactly how I see it. It's not about the differences. The difference it's the context. It's where people are coming from. But what you do with that as people, how you can come together, and it's not only in this case, a specific case of the film. It's about class differences, but we do it all the time. That we climb up or we close up to people who are even very close to us. It could be your partner, your spouse, your brother, your sister, and we close up. Even when we need people the most, we just clam up and don't show emotions, or don't trust, or don't open up. And the movie is very much about that. Like, okay, what if we do open up? What if we do reach out for the other person, or extend our hand and reach out for them and try and help? It's kind of strange, because we were doing doing it all before the pandemic, but somehow these themes really resonate. Now that the pandemic hit, it's the kind of thing that people are talking about more.
Hmm.
And maybe it was there in the script, but maybe that affected the editing in somehow. You
Hmm.
know.
In what way would you tell us about how did the film evolve during the editing?
Well, um, the editing process was mostly done, like, we did like 1 month in Panama together with the editor. She's Chilean, Soledad Salfate. She's a very good editor. She edited Gloria and Una Mujer Fantástica, Lelio's films,
Yeah.
and um, and she was in Panama for about a month with me, and then we started doing remote, and that's when the pandemic hit. So what I'm feeling is that even though we didn't know it at the time, we may have made some decisions based on the times we were living in. And it could be very subtle things. But the fact that the that we were in a remote situation, and with confinement and with isolation and with all that, so you're dealing with these topics, so you're more aware of them. The movie didn't change all that much in the editing room. In the editing room, we just made it work,
Hmm.
like usually does. You take care of the problems, you take care of, and you think about things, and you make it work, and 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 try and make the most of the material. But it didn't the the script didn't change all that much. It's
Um, Abner,
what I'm feeling is just nuances.
yeah, Abner, could you talk about how you arrived at the Plaza Catedral as the center of your story? We were talking before we came on the air that that used to be well, originally when it was built, it was the fancy part of Panama, and then as time went by, it became a really bad part of town, and it was very dangerous. When I was a young kid, it was a very dangerous area of town, and now it has become gentrified. So you have this clash of the sort of the old and the new in that Plaza Catedral. Can you talk about the genesis of choosing that location and also the story?
Yeah, well, the genesis is very simple, I would say. I lived there for a couple of years, um, and so I know the place very well, and I would observe it, as a person before I even looked at it as a filmmaker. And there's just something very beautiful about the plaza, uh, beyond the aesthetics of the place. It's a beautiful place, but there's something incredible about its dynamics, how it's changing all the time. If you go there in the morning, it's completely different than if you go there at noon, and if you go on a Tuesday, it's different than on a Saturday. It's always changing, and it has its own life. So I was always observing it, and I was also, the beginning of the story came from a relationship, a real relationship that I had. I would sit on the balcony, and at that moment I would smoke. I used to be a smoker, and I would talk to a guy who would clean cars, below. And in the beginning, it was just like, chit chat, small talk. But then after a while, a couple months went by, and when we would hang out, but I'd be on the balcony and he'd be doing his job below. So I thought to myself, okay, this is the beginning of an interesting story. I didn't know where it would lead. And of course, then it became something completely different. It's not an autobiographical film, although it does include a lot of my own personal experiences and feelings and things that matter to me. But the process of writing and rewriting takes that's just the beginning. What I tell you about. Yeah.
Correct. And tell us about casting Ilse Salas, the renowned Mexican actress, and how did the character evolve once she got involved in the production?
Well, one thing that's pretty interesting is that maybe 2 or 3 months before we started casting, the film was still written for a man.
Oh,
The main,
wow.
yeah, the main character was a male, and I had written him as a stereotypical Latino, macho Latino, knowingly. So, and I thought that that I could direct it in a way that you would show that it was knowingly so. But then when I was starting to look for actors, nothing matched. In my head, no face, no. You could show me the best actor in Latin America, and I would say no, 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 no. And I knew that there was something off. And one day, I just had the idea, like, okay, well, how about if it's a woman? And I played it in my mind, and I just played the whole script, as if it was like a video play. And I was like, oh, that scene works. Oh, this is better. And I just pretty much, I think the first script that I gave Ilse, it was still written for a man. And I told her, don't worry, it says él instead of ella. And, it's the same thing. You can think of it as a found character. It's like, I don't know that woman. You're going to have to give her life. You're going to have to give her everything that what means to be a woman. Let's I wrote her, I don't know her. It used to be a man, now it's a woman, and you have to give her life.
But
And that's
Abner,
how we started.
in the original story, I mean, it's still the main character had lost a child.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, everything
okay,
was exactly the same. And I tried not to change much about made that change in the gender. I tried not to change much because that made it possible to have this more realistic, more in tune with the day, with the present character of a female Latin American that you don't see that much in films, that you don't, or at least that I haven't seen that much in Latin American films, because
hmm
even there are some very interesting women in Latin American films, of course. I'm not saying it's the first one, but for me, it was interesting to see her play what came out of something that was completely different,
hmm
Um,
And her performance is so restrained. Was that something that originally was your idea that she's containing all her emotions? The only time that she's able to release is when she is involved with martial arts and has those moments of physicality. Can you talk about her internal containment?
yeah, well, that's one of the reasons that I thought she would be great for the part, because Ilse Salas is just an incredible actress. It was a luxury to work with her, and we did have that conversation about restraint. It was a recurring conversation because we were thinking, okay, we want her to be restrained, but when does she show something? And we would talk about the different moments that could be when she opens up. Is she going to cry here? Is she going to smile here? Is she going to we can't have her not show any emotions for the whole film. I mean, we could, but and I think at some point we just said, you know what, just go with it, feel it. You're inside the character. And I would suggest moments, and then she would try something else. But that was a very like fine tuning, and we gave ourselves a couple of options also. And then in the editing room, we put it all together, and so that it worked, that you could watch be contained for so long, because you could read into her. That's the kind of actress that she is, that you can really read into her
Hmm.
eyes in a way.
Yeah, and the choice of having her have this outlet of the martial arts is that something that was always there in the script, or that you guys discovered?
No, it was there in the script. It's funny. I thought the script would change a lot, because I usually do change things up a lot, and I've done a lot of documentary work, and I like mixing it up. But the script remained pretty much intact. I don't know why. We used it pretty much as is, um, which doesn't say anything good or bad, but it was unexpected for me. It changed,
Hmm.
of course, it changed, but not dramatically.
Hmm.
The martial arts was always there, exactly as that, as a place to show her her feelings, to show her violence, in a sense, to show her despair, and yeah,
Hmm.
and we use it dramatically also to express. I don't want to spoil too much,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no, correct. I'm glad you brought up your documentary background, because I was going to ask you about that, and the documentary sensibilities felt throughout the film, and the restraint. This film easily could have become filled with sentimentality, and it isn't at all. Can you talk about that?
yeah, well, that was a big danger, that it could very well have become like a really, you know, melodramatic film, and it still is melodramatic, but we tried to keep it in the restrained side, because we thought that, you know, I realized, talking about documentary, for example, when I did the documentary about the invasion of Panama, we didn't use any archival footage, so it was just people telling us what they lived through, and while doing that, I realized that sometimes just someone telling you their story can make you imagine so many potent and incredible images in your mind's eye, that you don't really need to show that much. Just a small suggestion can get. We all have the capacity to dream at night, to make up entire worlds, to imagine while we're awake anything we want. So we, with a very slight stimulus, we as humans have our own cinema inside, and when you realize that the power of that, then you can use it also like, for example, that when she tells about what happened to her kid, it was a very conscious decision not to show that, but just to have her tell it,
Yeah.
because you imagine, some people have even asked me if, like, they got confused and they thought that they saw it,
Oh,
because
that's
they
funny.
because they saw it in their mind, but but and that kind of thing, I think from documentary, what I've learned is that you're looking for truth in the same way as you would be looking for truth in a fiction film, meaning
Hmm.
that even if it's the real character telling you the real story in the real place, sometimes it feels fake, and
Hmm.
as a filmmaker, you need to look for that something that makes it feel genuine, that makes it feel real, that makes it feel honest, and once you have that, I don't know, that the radar for that honesty that you're looking for, it's pretty much the same for documentary work and for fiction, because what are you asking from an actor? To act as a person, of course, in very particular circumstances, but you're not asking them to act as a robot. You're asking them to act as a human. So supposedly everyone can do it, but no, the good actors, why are they good? Because we feel it's real,
I
you know.
which it's so crazy hearing you talk about saying that people we hear her talk about how her kid died and that people have imagined that they actually saw it. And I want to go to that scene because it's so visceral. The sound editing that you've done, there is a tropical storm outside, which reflects her internal world. Talk to us about shooting that scene and then the sound design around it.
Well, that scene, with Ilse, she would come very well prepared in terms of the script and all that, and we would just talk about strategy. Like, are you going to go this way or that way? But I wouldn't ask her to do it before, and especially when there were scenes where it involved Fernando, the kid. I would be very careful not to do it all before we would shoot, because I didn't want to get him tired, or to have him do it by repetition. But I wanted it to be spontaneous. So that day, for example, I just asked her. I told Fernando what we were gonna do, because he didn't read the script. I asked him not to read the script, and I would tell him what we were gonna do every time. And then we would talk a little bit about it, and they would practice like a back and forth of the dialogue, and maybe play it out in the apartment itself or wherever we were. And then we would shoot it like 10-15 minutes later. It wouldn't take so much, and we didn't do any rehearsals at all, because I don't like doing rehearsals with non-actors.
Yeah.
I think it's, well, that's my technique. And so that day, I told her, I asked Ilse, do you feel ready? And she said yes. And for me, that was enough. And I knew, I didn't even have to ask, that I knew that she was ready. And I just told Fernando, Ilse is going to tell you, when you ask her, she's going to tell you what happened with the kid. But I didn't tell him what she was going to say. So the first time he heard it was on camera. And
Wow.
even though he knew that it was, a script, he was moved by it, because he was very attached to Ilse by that point. And so what you see is him really listening to her.
Wow. Um, Tell us about casting Fernando Javier da Costa. How did that come up? How did you find him?
Well, Fernando, he never acted before. He was a kid in the same neighborhood, or the one adjacent to the one where we shot in San Felipe, and he's from Santa Ana, which is the neighborhood over. And he just came to an open casting. I knew that I couldn't find a kid like that in a casting agency. They just don't, they don't exist. So we made open casting in the neighborhood, in a school there. No, it was a hotel lobby, and he came all on his own. He didn't even ask his grandmother or his teachers or anyone. He just came, and he blew us away from the first day. We saw maybe 40 kids in that first round, and he was by far the best one. And I did a little trailer with him. And then when we were about to shoot a year later, he had grown from being 13, being 14. So I wanted to test him again, and I wanted to have more options, because now we were going to do the whole film. And maybe, we looked at maybe another 100 or 150 kids, and he was, again, by far, it's not only a matter of being better or worse, it's what I was looking for in terms of his charisma, the fact that he was a boy, but he wanted to be a man, and his voice was changing, and his intelligence, and the way he was such a natural on stage, and everything about him was just perfect for the part. And then, so he ended up, and he was also a winner. He was a dancer in a contemporary art company, and a contemporary dance company in the neighborhood. So I knew that he had the artist inside him, and he told me in one of the last sessions for the casting there were 3 kids, and I told them, listen, it's not a competition. You're all going to be in the film, but we're just looking at what different roles. And he came to me and told me in secret, I know it's a competition, and I want you to know I'm going to win. And
Oh.
and in my mind, I said, you just did, because you're looking for someone with that spirit. And he was just really special.
And then you were in post-production when he was murdered?
Yeah, it was really horrible.
And how did that the murder affect your post-production and you find a
Well,
lot.
no, the film was done. The film was almost ready to be. We didn't we it affected me more in a personal, me and everyone involved, because everyone loved it. More in a personal level. The film itself was all completely done, and we just went back and reopened the DCP and added a text dedicating it to him and repudiating juvenile violence. But yeah, it was closed, and that's also eerie because if you see the ending, it's not the usual. It almost feels like I knew that he was gonna be killed, but and of course I didn't, and I would have wanted him like right here, in another screen, talking to you and to me. Uh,
Correct.
um, it's really a horrible tragedy because he was. And the thing is, what I've been saying since is that if you look at the sensationalist newspapers in anywhere in Latin America, they'll have a picture of a dead kid every day almost, and sometimes with even no name, and they just pretty much blame it on gang violence and other problem. And then when it happens to someone that you know so well, and that their family, and the potential that was there, and the beauty in that soul, it's just heartbreaking to know that it happens every day to so many people that don't have someone to talk about them, that don't have someone to, I don't know, to remember them in a way.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, I want to say that his grandmother has a very beautiful way of looking at everything, and she's a very strong woman, and she always tells me that she's glad that he's in the film because his light shines on, and that maybe his example will make a difference for the other kids. So that gives
The
us some comfort.
the last shot of the film is so striking. It reminded me of 400 Blows, Francois Truffaut's film of Fernando running directly into the camera. How did that shot come about?
Exactly as a homage to 400 Blows.
Oh, okay.
but but I did it from memory, and then when the movie was done, I went back to see the last shot, and it's not similar. I
Yeah,
remember that it's lateral and it's a long shot,
correct.
but
Yeah.
in my mind I remember him coming towards the camera.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess that
It does freeze frame with him looking at us directly, the Truffaut film. Um,
but
but it
not the last. Well, yeah,
but it does have the feel, and you
yeah, yeah,
captured the feel of the
yeah,
Truffaut film.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so that was
That,
always when you shot that final sequence. That was always your intention to finish
yeah,
it that way.
yeah, yeah, and it's the only shot in the whole film that breaks the grammar of her point of view.
Correct.
Um, well, there's one other shot where he looks at her, but in this one it defies the logic of the regular grammar of the film, because we see her looking at him, and that's from her point of view, and then we see him from the audience's point of view in a way. And something interesting, it's really interesting what happens when people interpret it. I showed the film to my father, who has nothing to do with cinema. He loves cinema. He's always watched films, but he's not involved in making them. And when the film finished, he said to me, "Who's going to take care of that kid now?"
Wow.
And he was alive still. And I said, "Good question. That's yeah, exactly." Um, and that when he said that at the moment, I said, like, well, that's an odd comment for my father to be telling me after I work on a film for so many years. Uh, but
The f-
uh, but now it's stuck in my mind. Like, oh my God, he couldn't have said something more uh, to the point.
yeah, poignant. So the film, it hasn't been shown yet in Panama to audiences. It starts showing
Yeah,
this week, right?
we just postponed it because of the Omicron.
Oh, okay.
We're showing on the 3rd of February.
Okay,
Um, yeah, but it was shown in the Panama Film Festival. It premiered there, and then we did 1 week to qualify for the Oscars in Panama in December, and now it's going to be like a wider release.
correct.
In
Yeah. And what the people of Panama that have seen the film, what has been their reaction to it?
Oh, that first night that we showed it, it was in a big packed auditorium with 600 or so people, and the reactions were really strong. I mean, people, how when you make a film and then when it's over, sometimes people will tell you, okay, congratulations, I love the film, whatever, but you can feel if it's just out of being polite. But with this one, I really felt like there was an emotional connection.
Hmm.
um, and for me, that's the most that I can ask for. It's really it really feels like something was happening there. With the reaction was, I mean, I can't really explain it, but you have to be there and feel it with an audience like that. Um, how you feel that something happened in that room.
Hmm. You cast yourself in the role of Jack, who is, if there is a villain in the or despicable character in your movie, is Jack. Tell us about casting yourself in the role and playing it.
Yeah, well, you know what? I had actually done the work of looking for an actor for that film, for that character, and I had someone in mind, and then very, like, maybe 5 or 6 days before the day of the shoot, he couldn't do it. So I started looking for another, and I just said, you know what? I know this character, and I know that I can act if it's like anything, either from neutral to depressed. If it's like high energy, I don't think I can do it well. But anything like from normal to depressed, I can do very well, I think, in my mind. So I said, what the hell, I'll do it. And it was way out of my comfort zone. I enjoyed it, but it was nerve-wracking in a sense to act for the first time in a film. And
Well,
and yeah, but it was also, it was interesting. And in a way, I come from a tradition of merchants in Panama. There are no artists in the people I know. And I mean, you can pretty much say the same thing. It's the same Panama. um
yeah.
very few filmmakers, and when we were growing up, there were almost none. So I know characters like that much better than than you can imagine. So
Well, you did a
it was
very good job because I mean I'm getting to know you here, and you're so warm and this guy is despicable. So it's very good acting, very good acting.
thanks.
You
Well,
Yeah.
exploring the a-hole in me.
I'm glad you brought up the fact that there is almost no filmmaking tradition in Panama, and how does it feel for you to be basically being at the vanguard? You're basically creating a brand new path for, Panama and its tradition of filmmaking.
Well, it's like it's almost by accident, because I really, that was the plan, was to make films, and I'm from Panama, so I wanted to make them there. And it just happened that when I started making them, people came up to me and said, "Hey, you're making." When I did Chance of the Comedy, you're making the first film that's going to be shown in theaters in 60 years. And I was like, "What? Really?" And I sort of knew it because growing up, I hadn't seen a Panamanian film, and then I asked my parents and my grandparents, and they hadn't seen one either. So yeah, it was kind of strange. Uh, I people are very interested always in the productions. People support them. People appreciate what we're doing, and now it's not only me. I mean, there was other people. There were other people from the beginning, but now there's hundreds of people doing films or wanting to do films. I mean, I remember the first time I came back to Panama after studying film, and I showed one of my documentaries, and I said, raise your hand if you have a film project. And there was like 9 hands out of 400 people. And then I said, and raise your hand if you come through, and there was like three. And now I did that maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, and that was like 70 hands and 50, and every year we're making more and more films. It's great. I mean, now I don't even know the people making films. There's a young generation. So yeah, it's fascinating. It's kind of it's the kind of thing that I like to forget also, because maybe it's a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why I left Panama and I came to the United States, was because I wanted a career in the arts and in film, and there was no tradition there. So, we forge a path here in the United States. But yeah, well, I'm very proud, Abner, and of this film, and you in particular, and I wish you the best. Hey, it's shortlisted. Let's hope that it makes the five, and even if it doesn't, it's come this far, and it's a reason to rejoice.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you so much, Roger. It's really it's been wonderful to talk to you, and the fact that you're a Panamanian, I know that you understand everything in the film with with the context.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was very emotional for me to watch. Of course, I was watching it, with my film geek prism, but at the same time, it was deeply resonating because of our mutual background. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, well, thank you again, Abner. Stay
thank
well,
you.
and let's keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, hasta luego.